It begins as just another trip, nothing unusual. But when you're trapped in a small space with complete strangers, safety can vanish in an instant. Tonight, we dive into chilling real stories that prove the scariest journeys are the ones we thought were ordinary. We reached the Colorado cabin at the end of November, where the highway thinned into trees and the cold felt like a clean blade. Snow fell in a steady hush. Inside, the place smelled of pine cleaner and old heatboard games on the table, logs stacked just so, a map of the park on the wall. My sister claimed the top bunk, I took the lower. I was 7, nearly 8, still believing the world kept its secrets on high shelves. We were settling into the rented coziness when the first sound came, a hushed drag at the edge of hearing, not quite wind. I looked out. Between the dark trees and white snow a shape crossed our deck, light, smaller than a bear, larger than a fox. My father killed the lamp, the window turned into a mirror. The night swallowed its own footprints, and we pretended it was nothing. I woke later to the rhythm of footsteps somewhere outside. The sound wandered with the patience of a person who knew the path. I stared at the ceiling knots and learned a racing heart can drown out what you're trying to hear. Morning returned the forest to ordinary. My father and I walked the road to check the plow. That's where we met him, shorter than Dad, thick in the forearms, a green canvas jacket and a veteran's cap with gold stitching. "Patrick," he said, tapping his chest. He chatted like a neighbor who likes to know who's up for the weekend, where we'd come from, if the fireplace drew, if the oven ran hot. A friendly machine with a question for every step. Sweat beaded on his upper lip despite the cold. He said his family was at a nearby place and wished us a good holiday. His eyes kept hopping to me, to the forest edge, back to my father's hands. On the way back, I slipped on hidden ice and split my knee. Before Dad could lift me, Patrick reappeared from a direction that didn't make sense. "Got a kit at the cabin," he said easily. "Little cuts go bad out here." 10 minutes. Dad declined, polite but firm. Patrick smiled, said, "Listen to your dad, he knows where the wolves run," and melted into the trees. That night the knocking came before the dishes were dry. 2 taps on the far window, small, hard, like a ring. The landline was dead. Dad stepped onto the dark porch and returned pale. "Fresh tracks," he said. We went to bed with the fire low and the lamp on. Sleep broke into choppy pieces. Sometime after midnight, metal clinked faintly, a chain stirred by a pocket or a hand. By morning the line hummed again. Dad proposed a short hike to a creek, Mom wanted coffee and quiet, my sister staged hardship upstairs with a flashlight and a paperback. We took a side path under firs. In filtered light we found Prince bootleg squares with a lazy scuff leading to a cabin not on any map. It crouched in a small clearing, patched window, unswept porch, plywood where glass should be. Dad knocked. The door gave. The smell rolled out, first damp fabric, old food, metal. Not rot, not yet. Inside, ashtray thick with not ash, a sink of gray dishes, a child's pink jacket on a chair, zipper pull missing. Down a short hall, a bedroom with a mattress on the floor and a closet jammed shut with a chair. A woman sat on the edge of the bed, thin as if she'd forgotten to eat. Her hands rested on her knees like someone had placed them there. She looked at me and then at Dad and whispered, "He's not here. Please, go." A shape slid past the kitchen window, the green jacket, the cap. Patrick walked in with the 2 bright visitors, setting a metal toolbox on the table. He offered coffee. A bandage kit sat open beside a cloth tape measure and an ordinary notebook turned to a blank page. Dad put himself between us and the room. The woman stood in the doorway, trembling. "Please," she said again. "Just go." We knocked, Dad said. "The latch." "Much obliged," Patrick answered pleasantly, moving toward the stove. "You folks should sit." Cold water keeps little cuts quiet till they don't. His voice smiled, his eyes didn't. We backed toward the door. Mind the second step, he said, almost laughing. It likes to give. In the yard he called, "Hey, kid," and tossed something that skidded to my boot. A green plastic soldier, its rifle bent, little tooth marks in the helmet. I stepped around it like you step around a dead bird. We tried to go back the way we'd come. Patrick took a shortcut through the trees and appeared ahead, hands in pockets like this was a stroll. "Could have saved you 20 minutes, he said. Dad's voice sharpened, "Run. Now." He stepped toward the man, a small step, the bravest I've ever seen. I bolted, zigzagging through scrub, branches clawing at sleeves. Behind me, careful boots, a soft half laugh that didn't sound like any laugh I'd heard. "Come on, buddy," he called, sing-song. "You'll get turned around." The road's dirty berm opened a ribbon of plowed ice. Our cabin roof lifted between trees like a boat cresting a wave. I hit the porch wrong and the second step gave, a wooden tooth finding the same knee. Pain flashed white. The door flew wide, Mom's arms, Dad behind me. The deadbolt slammed. "I'm calling the sheriff," Dad said loud enough for the door to hear. 2 polite knocks ticked through the wood. Patrick's voice, "Neighbor gentle, no need for that. You'll want to watch those slips." The sheriff arrived with a deputy and blue lights that didn't belong in a forest. We told the story until it sounded like paper and edges. They followed us back to the hidden place. The cabin we found looked like ours and not ours, latch set, sink scrubbed to glass, no jacket, no tape, no notebook, no bead in the floor crack. The bedroom sheet smelled harshly of detergent, the space heater was unplugged. The closet shut by itself, now no chair needed. Of the woman, nothing that proved she had ever sat on a bed and asked us to leave. "We'll run a sweep," the sheriff said, his eyes careful on me. "Lots of Patricks." The deputy tasted the name like a stone. We saw boot marks that could have been ours. The afternoon snow turned to slush that wanted to be water again. We spent one more lamplit night, sleep traded like a relay baton. In the morning we packed fast, the place feeling both never happened and always happening. On the drive home, a buck watched us with sane eyes. Weeks later, the sheriff called. They checked leases, trespassers, cars left to gather snow. "A few leads," he said. "That road has history. The kind of call you make so the world doesn't notice you standing still." At home, the forest followed in small ways, refrigerator light like snow glare, the coat closet smelling faintly of damp wood. Dad installed an extra deadbolt and didn't joke about it. My sister kept sketching a bird feeder with teeth until, quietly, she stopped. Once a postcard arrived with a mountain that could be anywhere and no return address. Mom threw it away. Later I saw it in a drawer. Years on, in a different town, I saw a man at the end of a grocery aisle, a cap brim, a smile meant only for himself, an ordinary height with an extraordinary shadow of feeling beside him. He turned down the spice aisle and was gone. Probably not him. But I learned that some people are places, and some places keep walking around inside you. No record ever put a man named Patrick to a face my father recognized. No cap with its story stitched into the brim turned up in evidence. The woman, if she was wife or cousin or hostage of circumstance or of someone, never appeared on a poster we saw. Maybe she unplugged the heater, closed the closet door, and walked until the world forgot the shape she'd made. Sometimes, when winter pulls iron into the air, I hear 2 small knocks in memory and think about that second step, how it gives a little, how some men tell you that like a kindness and some like a dare. I don't know who he was. I know we were seen and allowed to walk away. And I know the woods can hold both kinds of men in the same cold hands without saying which is which. We crossed an ocean and the night changed languages. In Colorado, Winter spoke in sharp consonants: ice, pine, the clack of branches knocking antlers in the wind. In Queensland, the rainforest sang in vowels. The air stretched each sound until it fit the humidity, frogs in overlapping choirs, cicadas sawing a silver line through the dark, a creek gossiping to rocks it has known for 1,000 years. The night here didn't care if you listened, it performed for itself. I was 14, the age when you learn how to carry your fear like change in a pocket there, weighty, not worth showing. I'd come to stay over with my friend Eli, whose mother had taken a contract miles up a road that pretended to be a road. The company housed her in a small timber box on stilts, 2 bedrooms, a living kitchen with a brave fan, a thin corridor where the night waited just beyond a glass slider. The house sat back from a track that wandered off like a thought. Paper barks peeled in fat curls around us, eucalyptus breathed mint and oil and lightning. "You'll like it when the frogs start," Eli said, shouldering my bag. Like 1,000 tiny engines cranking at once. He wasn't wrong. He was never completely right. His mother hugged me with one arm and a tired smile, the sort of kindness that manages the budget of itself. Noodles steamed on the stove, a ripe mango glowed on the cutting board like a second Sunday storm later, she said, glancing at a bruise of cloud along the tree line. "Keep the back door locked. The latch is finicky." Finicky was a generous word for hardware with a drinking problem. The door opened from the short side of the house, half hidden by the corner where the stilts looked most uncertain. Inside, Eli's room wore its glass like a missing wall. A slider faced the jungle, no porch, no steps, just you, the pain, and the green that didn't stop. On the glass, low and smeared, were palm prints the size of a child's. Old. Grease ghosts. I lifted my sleeve and rubbed at one, my own print replaced what I'd erased. It felt like trading a signature with the night. "Welcome to the zoo without fences," Eli said. "If you see a huntsman, it pays rent by eating moths." "I'll send it an invoice," I told him. We set up camp, chips in a bowl, a bottle sweating on the table, a movie cued too loud enough to pretend we were older. The fan ticked a hypnotist's watch through warm air. Rain came with the patience of someone unspooling a long apology. It lifted the smell of leaf and dirt until the room tasted green. Halfway to the bathroom, I paused at his mother's door. Through the cracked frame I saw a neat bed, a folded scarf, the rectangle of her window salted with rain. A man spoke outside her glass. Not a radio. Not a TV. A voice clipped short like rope. A sentence made of familiar parts that didn't quite build a meaning, as if he were asking a question he didn't expect anyone to answer. I stood there, hand on the hallway wall, while a small animal in my chest stood too. "Eli," I hissed. He muted the movie and came in a half-run that wanted to be a walk. He didn't yank curtains, he knew better. He leaned into the sliver where fabric missed the frame and the window offered back a coin-thin reflection of his eye. His breath clicked. He didn't look at me, his fingers found my sleeve like a blind man finds the rail on a stair. "No one should be there," he said, and the sentence fit the room too well. We didn't wake his mother, and I have rehearsed that mistake 100 times since. Instead, we fled the hall like kids caught stealing a look at a grown-up conversation. On the couch we arranged ourselves as before, same bowl, same bottle, the screen bleeding motion. We learned the hard way that pretending is a poor lock. Darkness thickened into the kind that holds itself together. The storm shuddered inland. The frogs loud in tides. Eli texted his mom, "Lock your door," and the message floated on one thin bar that disappeared like a trick. His room was a mouth open to the forest. Even with curtains pulled, the slider knew how to turn the night into a presence. We tried sleeping in the face of it. He starfished across his mattress, the fan ruffling his hair. I took a folded blanket, curled low on the floor because low felt invisible. Possums galloped insults along corrugated roofs somewhere down the track. A gecko clicked like a metronome for insects. The room was a machine that manufactured almost sleep. I do not know when the eyes arrived. I know how they waited. A mistake, that's how it began. I lifted the curtain an inch to prove to myself that the only thing out there was plant and water and the promise of more plant. The house fed a slice of light to the glass. 2 points fed it back from a height wrong for anything else. Retinal shine is common if you grow up in the right places. Dogs, cats, even wallabies throw back a bit of borrowed moon. But animals calculate. They flinch, tilt, test the light. These did not. They were human, flat, patient, unblinking. A worker's eyes. A watcher's eyes. They fixed on the spot where my breath clouded the glass and held there as if my lungs were the only clock they kept. "Eli," I said, "throat a desert." He didn't move. "Don't freak," he whispered, which is the national anthem of failure. The eyes stayed. I counted seconds until numbers stopped meaning time. The curtain brushed my wrist and made me believe for one stupid heartbeat that something had reached in. The eyes did not widen or narrow. They were not interested in scaring us. They were interested in looking. We learned the other lesson next: feet from leaf sound like feet, even through walls. A human step puts its mind down first. Heel, toe, decision. The house told us where he was by how its boards remembered stress. He moved along the short side, found the back door like people find the refrigerator in the dark, and tested the latch with someone else's politeness. Metal stuttered against metal. Not force auditions. A breath thinned itself into the seam where wood meets frame and listened to our listening. Eli had the number punched. My thumb hit call. The line caught, stuttered, caught. "Police," a voice said, ordained, and bored and glorious. "Emergency. Small house off, there's someone back door," I said, and the night unthreaded the call like string. The single bar on my screen lay down and pretended it had never tried. The house held us like a held breath. From the big place down the track came a landline's ring, a clean, bell metal note that crossed damp air like a thrown coin. It rang again. A third time. It stopped, and silence changed temperature the way silence does when someone has lifted a phone in another building. Eli's mother opened her door with the strict grace of a person who uses adrenaline as a tool. Her lamp made an obedient rectangle on the floor. She had the little mobile at her ear. Her voice was quieter than it needed to be. "He answered at the main house," she said. "He said he'll check the fences." I did not know a sentence could make a room smaller. "Car," she said next. "Now." On the deck, the floodlight buzzed like an old idea. Moths smashed themselves gently at its lens. We slid into the car and locked it and tasted plastic and dust and the sweet of mango left over from earlier. Eli's mother stared at the short side of the house where the back door solved no problems. She dialed and redialed and nodded at people we could not see. Headlights unstitched the trees. Not police. A battered truck nosed into the yard and sighed as if glad to be done rolling. A man stepped out, his upper half erased by floodlight shadow, his boots doing introductions to the dirt. He looked like someone who made fences by thinking about them. He raised his torch, its beam flattening the world into obedient shapes, and walked the line of the house like a doctor reading a body. "Post is loose," he said to the night. The corner support, one of the squat timber legs that kept the deck dry-footed, listed at an angle, the soil around its base chewed. He crouched over prints and didn't call them prints, he let his torch say it. "Kids," he announced, like a verdict rendered after lunch. Then the beam and the boot slipped into the trees, toward the path that looked like no path, and we were 3 faces behind a windshield wishing glass counted as a wall. We packed in 5 minutes. It is astonishing how much of a life can fit into 5 minutes when you need it to. I almost left a book I loved under Eli's pillow and at the last second rescued it like a pet from a burning house. The night unhooked itself from the floodlight as we drove away, letting us go with no ceremony. On the main road my phone resurrected, full of old courage. The fan in the small house turned without us, measuring a room that no longer contained a shape to watch. We slept at a motel that believed in mirrors more than lamps. The air conditioner bragged and failed. I dreamt of glass refusing to be a boundary. In the morning, when daylight made the world remember its surfaces, we returned. Absence makes excellent evidence. Around the back door, a churn of boot prints, square-lugged and repeating, the scuff of a lazy drag. The corner post lay shouldered, wood splinters bright as bone where force had reintroduced the deck to gravity. On Eli's slider, at the height of a face, two dried ovals bloomed side by side, the ghost of breath from lungs that were not mine. Eli touched the mud beside a print and put his own hand against it the way kids do with paw tracks by a creek. He didn't say anything. His mother swept leaves away from the door as if tidiness were a charm. We left that house when the contract ended. Time is the only locksmith who never fails. But the rainforest learned my name the way the snow had. It visited when storms rehearsed. It sent the smell of soaked leaf under my window, and in that smell hid the thin sound a human throat makes when it leans to a door. People ask for a ghost because ghosts are merciful, they can be banished by morning. What watched us did not believe in dawn. It believed in the unblinking economy of attention. It believed glass was a meeting place, not a barrier. And it taught me, again, what Colorado had already tried to teach: a cabin is a promise you make to yourself with wood. Promises keep until hands arrive. Years later, in a supermarket in a city that had never met a rainforest, I saw a man in a cap stop at the end of an aisle and check the height of the shelves the way a carpenter checks a doorway. He glanced down the spice row without picking a label. His face held no story. He moved on. Probably not him. It didn't matter. The point of a story like this is not the who. It's the where, the place inside you that becomes a window with breath on it, and the knowledge that somewhere a matching oval waits on the other side. I learned other things. That quiet is not innocent, it can be a tool sharpened on the whetstone of patience. That doors do not owe you protection, they owe you honesty. That a phone that connects today is a miracle and a trap, and you should practice leaving anyway. That when people promise to check the fences, they might mean they will measure whether your fear will be content with a sentence. In Colorado, a porch step gave exactly when it could hurt most. In Queensland, a latch introduced itself by failing politely. In both places, what haunted was not a woman in white or a borrowed legend, it was the willingness of a gaze to turn a life into a task. We escaped twice, which is 2 more times than anyone deserves. Once, late, I tried to tell the story to someone who wanted clean lines and answers. Did they catch him? She asked, like the world were a show that needed its third act. I told her about the prints like quotations in the mud, about the breath on glass redrawn and redrawn, about the corner post laid on its side like a fallen chess piece. That's not an ending, she said. I thought of Colorado's second step and the way it likes to give, a sentence delivered like a kindness and a dare. I thought of a landline ringing in the large house and a voice answering in a tone the night accepted. I thought of 2 eyes that never blinked because blinking wastes seconds and patience pays interest. It is, I said. It's just not the one you wanted. Cabins are supposed to be where peace lives on weekends. Sometimes they are just rooms that give fear a frame. Most ghosts are metaphors. The eyes you meet out there, snowlit or leaf dim, are not. If you find yourself in a forest and the dark hands you your own light back in 2 bright coins at the height of a man's face, you will discover how loud your heart is and how quiet your body can be. You will remember every latch you've ever trusted and every sentence that tried to soothe you when it should have warned. You will become a person who knows what glass is for. And if one night a knock arrives dressed as a breath, and a voice out in the rain asks a question made of familiar parts that don't add up, if a landline rings and a fence gets checked and a truck comes when a badge doesn't, then do the oldest, simplest, bravest arithmetic. Gather your names. Choose the road. Leave before the door decides it can open. Because in the end, safety isn't a place you rent by the weekend. It's a decision you make in the dark, standing on the inside of a thin idea, staring back at eyes that do not blink, and remembering firmly, fully that you are allowed to walk away.